Good morning. And I don't know about y'all, but once again, my inbox is completely full. And this week, it seems like most of the news went in one particular lane. And what I'm curious about before I get digging into these, am I the only one whose inbox is completely full of real estate news stories, or do you get them too? Do you open them and read them, or do you just let it fly by? And do consumers read how much of this stuff? That's what I really want to know because right now we have a situation happening in real estate that is affecting the everyday consumer, and what they know about it is going to depend entirely on what agent they talk to. And if you are not ready to get into the real estate weeds, then go ahead and get your coffee and get your eyes open because we have to talk about this. And if you're a consumer who stumbled over here, these are going to be some things you can talk to your agent about and just saying. Now, if you wonder why I'm in this environment, I'm coming to you live from the National Auction Convention where we're talking about all things auction, and that includes a lot of things about all things auction real estate. And I'm going to come back to that at the end of our headlines. So, by the way, if you are over in the chat, I'll do my best to take a glance, but I do really well just to even see the articles that we have. So, the first article that I saw this week came out of the Baltimore Sun, and it said, hang on, there we go. How to sell a house without using a realtor and what to know first. Now, in real estate, we call these FISBOs, for sale by owners. You've seen them even in popular media. There was an episode of Modern Family that had a FISBO. And you see an article like this, it's coming out of the Newswire, how to sell without using a realtor. All right, the first thing you have to know, y'all, with all the talk that's gone on about how expensive it is to use a realtor and why you shouldn't have to use one, you've been able to do this by yourself forever. It's just part of the process. And a lot of people figure, hey, it's worth a shot. Let me see what I can do. And so part of the situation in this article, I died laughing. Not gonna lie to y'all, I had a big belly laugh because in the middle of the article, in the pros section, it said, "You're in control. Having no middleman between you and the buyer can simplify the process, puts you in a driver's seat. You make all the decisions yourself, can do things exactly as you like." What are they smoking at the Baltimore Sun? Because they're high on their own supply. That's crazy, y'all. The one thing that's constant about real estate, one thing, doesn't matter where you are, no price point, geography doesn't matter. You have no control. You know why? Because you're trying to sell and you can't control the market conditions. You can't control when your buyer is going to come through the door. You can't control the situation that buyer's in. Are they under a time gun for relocation? Are they shopping for mom and they're just doing the preliminary look? They've got financing questions. And then if the buyer's obtaining financing, well, you can't control the lender that they select. You can't control if they pick somebody local who understands your house, your neighborhood, your zip code, or if they pick some internet lender who's in a call center somewhere halfway across the country who has zero idea about your area. And then you can't control the appraiser that that bank sends out. And we should be talking about the appraisal situation because it's about to get a whole lot hairier. You can't control what inspector they use, what the inspector finds. You can't control whether or not they do a survey. And if you bought a house that had a survey that was missing and the fence is encroaching and you're having to deal with all this, I mean, are you kidding me? You're in the driver's seat so you can control it. If you are thinking about selling a house and you happen to stumble across any of my information, please understand you can't control anything. Your realtor can't control anything. So whether you're FISBO or with a professional, we have to understand there's only a certain number of things that we can control. The number one thing being transparency and communication. That's about all we can control. So that was hilarious to me. And then, of course, in the rest of the article, they do talk about the fact that there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of laws and regulations, there's disclosures, there's all these hiccups going on. So it was a thinly veiled article trying to get you to use a realtor, which I'm in favor of as a realtor. But if you are for sale by owner, you should just know that those of us in the business, we don't blame you for that. We feel a little sorry for you because it's going to be a really big pain when you go down that road. But anyway, so let's talk about the big conversation that's happening. It's around what's called private listings. Now, what you'll see in the Wall Street Journal is a very fair headline, to be honest. And it said property listings are more complex than ever. All right, what that means is if you go back to the dark days of real estate, as in before smartphones, before Zillow, before apps and AI, and oh, the good old days, y'all, before we even had caller ID or voicemail. Oh, can we just say a little moment of the 80s were great? But back in those days, there was a book. It was the MLS book, and agents were the only ones that had access to it, not because they were hiding it from you, but because it was a perk of being a realtor. That in realtor world, the perk of joining the association was that you could then talk to a seller about listing their house. You could offer to them this huge advantage of putting their house in front of all the other realtors who were also choosing to put their information into that book. A very fair marketplace because it was all realtors, regardless of time in the industry, regardless of brand, regardless of the depth of their pocketbooks. Everybody's listings were in one place, which meant that if you wanted to buy a house and you called my dad, you could say, "Hey, Daryl, go look for me a house." And he would page through the book and see what he could find for you. And then on the following Tuesday, there would be some new pages coming into the book, and he would make some phone calls to his colleagues and figure out what was best for you. It was a fairly simple system. And as y'all know, Occam's razor talks about the simplest solution. Yeah, the MLS book was the simplest solution. What's gotten complex is that as the internet became a thing and as apps became a thing and as Zillow became a thing, and then of course homes.com and realtor.com and all the dot coms that were not realtor driven but were money and Wall Street driven, they wanted the book. And so as realtors got tech savvy, I know, and took it to the green screen and made themselves a program where they could search without having to find that physical book, all of those big money companies wanted access to it so they could then put it on the internet. And then once they take this listing that the realtor procured, got the information and put into the realtor system, and then it went out to the Zillow, realtor.com, homes.com websites, they then monetized all that. Zillow makes money on your eyeballs. If you are a consumer, please understand this. That app is free, but it's just like the free of Google and everything else. You have traded your information and you think you're getting something free, but they take your information and they sell it and they monetize it. And they've monetized it on the backs of the very agents who built the system in the first place. So now Zillow took this book, which went to the internet, and took it out. All right. Seems okay. As an agent, of course, I've got my listings on Zillow and everywhere else because I think it's the best thing for my sellers. If they want to sell the house, let me get them exposed to the entire marketplace so that wherever their buyer is located, we have a chance of finding them. We're in a very big fragmented world right now. I don't know where you get your news from, but if you get it from one source, it's probably going to have their information in it, and you don't even hear the other conversations because you're only hearing one source. Actually, this is the perfect analogy, and it just occurred to me. So, welcome to my train of thought here on a Thursday morning. All right. Now, what's happening is that since the giant lawsuit in October of 23, when the courtroom in Missouri said that the realtors were guilty of shenanigans and the lawyers made 9 figures worth of generational lifetime money saying that realtors were bad, what happened is the regulations came in and said that you as a consumer have to receive certain information, which you should have been receiving all along, let's be honest, and you were going to have to sign an agreement with the buyer's agent before you go look at a house. All right. So you as a consumer could no longer talk to this one, talk to that one, kind of see if you G and haul. Are we going to be a good fit? Are we friends? Are we working together? What are we doing here? You're supposed to sign paperwork right up front before you really know what you're doing. Doesn't seem very consumer friendly, does it? Yes, it's actually not. So what happened is if you're looking to buy, and no, it's too soon for that. Okay. I'm way ahead of myself this morning. But now you're supposed to sign paperwork. Okay. So you've picked Agent Bob. Agent Bob works for Company X. Company X says, in the wake of the lawsuit and in the wake of all the shenanigans that are going on, they said, you know what? We don't want to put our listings into that multiple listing service. We don't want it in the book on the green screen. We don't want it anywhere in the realtor system. We're going to keep it to ourselves in our house. We're going to protect our listing. And that means they're selling to this buyer. You can only see the house over here on Maple if you call us. Now, what if the buyer has an agent with another company? Well, too bad, so sad, because that agent doesn't have access to it because it's in-house, also known as exclusive listings. Now, what that company told the seller of that house on Maple is, we know that you need privacy. So we're not going to let everybody see your house. I still don't know how they sell it because I haven't been in that presentation. The other half of that argument is we know you're still repairing some things. You're still painting and doing the rugs and you're taking care of some rotted wood and maybe that leak under the hall toilet. You're still doing all those things. We don't want everybody to see your house while it's not perfect. So we're only going to tell some buyers about it while it's not perfect. So they're only going to see it in its not best form. I see, again, still not sure how they sell it, but more power to you. So what happens is a piece of the market gets subtracted from what was the book, from what was the computer, from what was all of the explosion of websites built around it. So when the Wall Street Journal says, here's what you need to know about property listings being complex, it's that you, the buyer, are driving down Maple Street and you see a sign in the yard. And you're like, So you call your agent. You say, hey, Bob, there's a house over here on Maple. Bob goes to the multiple listing and says, I don't see a house on Maple. Well, it's because it's with a different company and they have hidden it from Bob because they only want their agents to see it because of privacy. They want people to not know it's not ready for the market. All right. That's a situation we find ourselves in. And that's why you're seeing all these headlines about property listings. So let me go back to this article over here, which would be the rest of that Wall Street Journal article. And this one is the one that's I don't think it's right. Okay. So I will say, as an independent broker, I do have my own opinions. As somebody who looks at real estate from a 30,000-foot view from the rooftop of a really tall building, I'm looking at real estate, how it takes care of my family, takes care of my clients, but also what it means for the profession overall. And what the Wall Street Journal says here is very true. If you're looking to buy a house, it is harder today than it was a few years ago. It's because you've got houses everywhere. Some companies, some websites, they're all over the place. It says you should interview agents from different brokerages. Absolutely, you should. You should have always interviewed agents. And can we just go ahead and say that maybe part of the reason we have a problem within real estate with professionalism and with issues is that consumers need to be interviewing better? I do think that quite often consumers pick the agent that is the ex-wife of their brother-in-law from the golf club, and they just felt obligated to use that person who might be the best option, but they did not interview. You really should be interviewing. But the Wall Street Journal says, ask them what access they have to private listings and how they will make sure you aren't missing out on any homes. Well, when my buyers and I are talking, I have to tell them, I might not know about every house on the market because I'm not a part of this company over here and this company over here. So now my consumer has a choice. They can either use the agent that is highly knowledgeable, competent, that they trust, and they've interviewed thoroughly, or they can call over to that company and get somebody else who might be amazing, but might not be, to get access to that bucket. Okay, but what? What if the house they want is not in this bucket? Okay, well, now they've gone over to this company. Now we've got to talk to somebody else. And maybe they're highly knowledgeable and competent, but maybe they're not, but they want to look at this bucket. How in the world is this better for the consumer? Just somebody explain to me how it is better for the buyer to have to call over here and interview an agent so they get access to a list, and then call over here and get access to an agent and interview them to get access to a list, and do the same thing over here. This consumer is going to have to go everywhere trying to gather information when we used to have one resource. We used to have one resource, but now it is being fragmented. So let's talk about what's happening with that because, as I mentioned to you, there are companies who do have their listings in a bucket over here. It's in private, it's a private bucket. Their excuse for it is that the seller wants it. It is seller choice. Okay, I really, really hope that they have explained to that seller what it means to be over here in a bucket by yourself. I hope that they've told that seller that means only the agents in their company are going to be able to promote that house, and that all the agents over here with all the buyers that they're working with don't have access to it. I hope that they've told them that. And I do believe, because I know agents in all companies, there are some amazeballs agents in every company. And I know that they're the type who explain, explain, explain. They might actually have a super fancy athlete who needs to keep their house off market. I get that. I just don't believe it's every single time. So, does that seller know that their house is being excluded from the rest of the market? And if they do, was it ever explained to them why? Now, we're going to have to talk about why there are companies that pull houses out of the market. And I have to send y'all to my friend Bruce from Georgia. This is a really well written article. It's in Real Estate News. The headliner, I said it was in the op eds. Look this up and read it because Bruce spells it out so perfectly. He's got it over on his LinkedIn. You can see how to spell his last name, A-I-L-O. Ailion. I can never spell Bruce's name right. That's why I just call him Bruce in Georgia. So go look this up and read it because consumers need to know that when a company pulls listings over here and hides them, you can say it's for the seller, but we know what it's for. It's because they know that if they have the house on Maple hidden over here in this bucket, the buyer who's calling around is looking for that house. It's a way to trap the buyer. It's a honeypot. An exclusive listing is a honeypot. And then once they've got that buyer over here, what are they going to do based on the terms of the lawsuit? Probably going to tell this buyer who's been calling all around looking for the house on Maple, hey, you have to sign this to see the house on Maple. And the buyer who really does want to be on Maple Street goes ahead and signs it. And consumers, please read things. Please read before you sign it. Please do not sign a 6-month agreement unless you are comfortable signing a 6-month agreement. Ask. How long is this agreement that I'm signing? Is this just for one house? Is it for a 24-hour period? Is it for a month? What am I signing here? What am I signing? Because what's happening is that buyer is signing something just to get access to Maple. And I don't know how it's explained to them. And maybe they didn't listen. I don't know. I don't know all things. But if the buyer signed it just to get into Maple, and then they go in, they're like, it looked really good online. I've been driving by this house for years, but I don't feel it. It's not for me. And y'all, that's happened so many times. I mean, 26 years in the business with buyers, you know that driving by the house, they've fallen in love with the outside. Walking in, they might say, I don't like this floor plan at all. I need X, I need Y. I just don't like how it sits now. It doesn't feel right. It's not my house because every buyer sparkles and they're in the right house. So they've walked in, they don't like Maple. Well, now what? They've signed an agreement. Yes. So now you're stuck with the agent you signed that agreement with. But I don't even want Maple anymore. And they said, too bad, so sad. You signed an agreement to work with us to sell any house. That's what's happening right now. It's a money grab. Can we just call the exclusive listing game what it is? It's a money grab. I don't care if you think it is for days on market. It's not, because we all know a properly positioned house that is properly conditioned as well as positioned, so position and condition, it's not going to accumulate insane days on market unless something else is off. And so if something's off and the buyer chases that house over, does the buyer want it when it's not ready yet? This is not good. This is not good for buyers. It is not good for sellers. And by the way, I think for every consumer out there, not consumer, for agents who are worried about AI in real estate, you know this is opening the door for AI bots to start doing things that you don't want them to do, because I think they could scrape all these websites and create something different. And then you, the agent, are out of the conversation. And I do think agents have a very important role in the conversation. Do we have too many agents? Entirely possible. There are some agents, it's just time for them to find some other way to earn a living. I get that. It's a hard business to survive in. Professionalism is not where it should be. And we're seeing that with this proliferation of exclusive listings. Now, I'll put it to you this way. I think there are the occasional sellers who need to keep their business really, really private. Maybe there's a restraining order on one of the former spouses. Maybe there is a huge trust account situation. Maybe there is a true celebrity situation where they have to be super duper uber private. But those are rare. They are not the huge bulk of the marketplace. The bulk of the marketplace, when somebody calls me and says, I'd like to sell my house, I don't have conversations that say we don't want everybody to know about our house. We want there to only be a few people who see it so that it won't sell as quickly. Doesn't usually happen. And frankly, if somebody tells me, I don't want every buyer to see my house. Oh, I really only want certain buyers to see my house. Don't y'all think it starts to feel like a fair housing problem? Because I was trained very early by my dad that we don't care what color somebody is, what language they speak, or who they're sleeping with. All we care about is the color of money. Can they afford to buy this house at this price? That's all that matters. And so if you start playing this game of only some people can see a house, you're going to have to be really diligent about asking questions. And so speaking of that whole ethical fair housing situation, You may have seen this giant news buster yesterday, Compass filing ethics complaints against Zillow in 26 states. Now, as you know, one of the things that I love about the National Association of Realtors is that we were the very first trade association to have our own code of ethics. And I love our code of ethics. I love that it's a living, breathing document that does its very best to hold us to a higher standard. And I have National Ethics Day coming up at the end of July. If you don't know about this or your association hasn't signed up, please have them reach out to us because we live stream this and make it really engaging because our ethics is amazing when you start looking at what it can do to improve the professionalism in real estate. I don't think this is going to improve the professionalism in real estate. And here's why. Our ethics program is built on self policing. So agents have to self police our code of ethics. And when it is self policed, it's staffed by volunteers. We have volunteers in our local associations around the country who diligently stand up on grievance panels and professional standards panels to hear complaints, to weigh the pros and cons of what's gone on, to hear both sides of the story, to look at the code of ethics, to look at everything in the standards of practice and determine if we have a guilty situation or not. When Zillow is getting complaints in 26 states, it's going to bog down our system. Y'all know that, right? Excuse me. Excuse me. This is weaponization of our code of ethics, in my opinion. Because if there's a complaint, I believe they could have filed it in one area and not gone out and put this burden on our volunteers because this is all volunteer stuff. And frankly, in some associations that are larger, it's also going to burden down our staff. And if you're in a small association that has one person running the show for this member driven organization, this is going to be a huge demand on resources and time. So now what's the complaint Compass has? Well, Zillow put in a policy that said, if a listing is over here in the Compass exclusive listings bucket, we're not going to let it be shown on the Zillow website. They're making their own rules about what the consumer can and can't see. Well, Zillow does that because why? They're trying to monetize the data. Why does Compass want to have exclusive listings? Because they're trying to be a honeypot for buyers and trap both sides of the transaction. And they also want to trap agents. By the way, you should know that part of the play is that an agent who wants to work with their buyers comes on over to that company so they have access to that bucket. And it's legal. I don't like it, but it's legal. And I'm not saying that there's not amazing agents over there. I'm just telling you, Compass is trying to make money and Zillow is trying to make money. And in the process, they're going to weigh down the self-policing, volunteer-driven organizations that are doing their best to bring a professionalism into this. And so then the question becomes at the end of the day on this, whose data is it? Is it the seller of the home? Do they own the data? Or is it the agent who walked in the house, earned the trust, got the listing agreement signed, and then put the data in the system? Although the agreement is not with the agent, the agreement is with the brokerage. So the brokerage is in charge of the listing, but the agent is in charge of the data because they're the boots on the ground, but it's the seller's house. Well, the buyer's relying on that data. Zillow's relying on that data. And in every MLS, our bylaws and our regulations are basically built to say GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And the quality of that data has to do with the agent who is the boots on the ground. But when you look at all these arguments over exclusive listings, over what buyers can and can't see, over the ethics complaints, do you know which voice isn't really being heard? It is the individual listing agent who worked their tail off to get a chance to sit at the kitchen table with a consumer, bring all of their information and their data, and try to figure out a strategy and a plan for getting a house sold in a market that's gotten fairly challenging because not everything sells quickly. Some houses are taking months right now, and buyers are a little reticent. That agent is not being talked to by any of these organizations. I would like to hear what the average listing agent says. I would like to hear what the average buyer agent says. Because when we look at all of this, let's just boil it all down. And if you look at all these headlines, Compass, big money. Zillow, big money. Wall Street Journal, big money. Baltimore Sun, big money. Agents are not big money, y'all. Our realtor members out there, they are micro entrepreneurs working their zip codes, working their marketplaces, doing the best that they can to make a living for their family by helping somebody else with what is generally the biggest financial transaction of their lives. They are not big money. If you look at the National Association of Realtors statistics, the average realtor makes around $56,000 a year. Okay, in some markets that's enough to make a living, but in other areas that's not going to be able to afford gas and groceries right now, especially in real estate where we use more gas than a lot of people. And if you're only making 56, you probably can't afford a Tesla. Let's call that what it is. So they're over here trying to make a living while all the data is being fought about by giant money that just wants to take everything that we do and turn it into something to sell. Something's broken out there, y'all. And when you look at all of these things, we're going to have to figure out as members of a reasonable society that this giant crony corporative capitalism that's going on, there's something broken when big controls everything. The way the country was built and the way that real estate was built was on the backs of one man, one woman who said, I think I can, and then had the discipline and the drive to go figure it out. That's who should be in charge of this conversation. And that being said, I got to add in that being here at the auction convention, I'm talking to a lot of the agents here who are realtor members. They're also licensed auctioneers and they do real estate in a lot of places. So when you look at the situation here of hidden information in this bucket and this bucket and how do you get access to it, it begins to look like auction might be the best possible outcome and for a lot of reasons. And here's why I love auction and real estate. As a buyer, you know what the bids are. You do have some transparency. I mean, unless it's a sealed bid auction, that's a whole separate thing. But on a general auction, you know what the bids are. That's been a frustration for every one of my buyers who's ever bought something in multiple offers. We say, hey, to the agent, we're bringing you an offer. She says, hey, we have another offer coming in. I have to trust that she's telling me the truth. Now, I know that many of the agents that I've known for a long time, they could never lie. But if it's somebody I don't know, well, I don't know what I don't know. And then we send in our offer and they call for best and final. And so we make our best and final run. I don't know what the other side's doing. So we're always bidding maybe against ourselves or bidding against a big question mark. And auction is transparent. The other thing about auction is that it's very well published what the buyer premium is. You know what the commission dollars are. And as regular realtors, if you do traditional model real estate, don't be afraid of auction. You should be calling your local auctioneer and saying, hey, how does this work? Help me help my buyers with this property because every auctioneer that's here would love to educate you. And right now we have an education gap between traditional model real estate and auction model real estate. And the other thing about auction model real estate, every property gets fully advertised because there's no incentive to hide an auction property from the market. Otherwise, you might be missing out on the best possible bid for the seller. And as an auctioneer, and I'm engaged to auction something off, my duties are to the seller. It's true fiduciary. So, anyway, some things to consider if you're not involved in auction. Call your local auctioneer and ask them to educate you. And if they don't want to, then call me and I'll connect you to somebody that I know because people are great. So let me take a quick look at our comments over here and see if there's something amazing. Good morning, Deborah. I love her. This is the best of coastal Virginia, y'all. She's served in every capacity and she's amazing. And then we have Bob over here. Consumers are confused. They should be because agents are confused, Bob. And I wasn't talking about, there's two Bobs over here. There's a lot of Bobs over here. I wasn't talking about any Bob in specific, Bob, but if I was talking about you, I would have made a funnier joke. And then let's see, private listing seems like a bad practice, not only for, I don't know how I show these things. I got to learn how to use the interwebs better, not only for buyers, but for the sellers. No, I don't know how to do that. I'll figure this out someday. Did I do it? I did it. I finally figured out how to show a comment. Okay, so M Freeze here. Private listing seems like a bad practice, not only for buyers, but for the sellers. How can you get the maximum price for your sellers keeping a listing private? That's my question. And what we're also seeing is that the data is starting to come in. And as the data is coming in, it's showing that if you sell Privately, you're getting less. Now, I will say this, if the consumer has been fully informed, if they have received fully informed information, so they are making a fully informed consent decision, which is what we didn't get during, let's just say, the COVID era. We did not have informed consent on a lot of things that would happen in your arm. So when you think about that, will a seller trade it? Will they trade money for privacy? There are absolutely people that will. I mentioned before restraining orders. I've helped a home seller who had a restraining order against an ex. It was in her best interest that we get this done as quietly as we could. So, yes, we did a pocket listing. This was years ago. Exclusive listings used to be called pocket listings, hip pocket listings. They were basically, held in your pocket. But, ladies don't like pockets that adds bulk. But I helped her quietly get the house sold by making calls to colleagues who had a buyer, and we did not publish it. She checked every box because it was in her best interest. But I'm 26 years in. I have sold, I don't know, 3,000 houses. I tried to do the math one time and gave up because it's just too hard. That's the only time I've had that happen where somebody had to be off market, and it was for absolutely the most pertinent thing, which was a safety reason. So, yes, it does happen. But right now, if you look at the number of listings that are being marketed exclusively, and then you're watching them come into the market, I believe the stat I saw said that it's over 90% of them come into the regular market later. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious, y'all. If it's not perfect, then you're just telling the seller to show yourself to some buyers. But here's the thing about buyers, they don't like to come back after they saw it one time. We all know this for the listing you ever saw or had, and it said carpet allowance offered. And your buyers are like, I'll look at it anyway. They walk in like, oh, it's not just the carpet. And so the sellers could probably have changed out the carpet because dollar for dollar, it's one of the best upgrades you can do to your house. Just go ahead and change out the rugs. And so the buyers ruled it out. You talk to your sellers, you're like, hey, boo, they couldn't deal with the carpet. They heard about the allowance. We explained it to them. We got a quote on LVP. They were just not interested in it. And so the seller says, you're right. I was just going to see if I could get away with it. Let me go ahead and do it. And so they go ahead and do it. And then you, the agent, call that buyer agent back and say, hey, y'all can come on back. We got some new floors over here. Looks amazing. They call the buyers. You know what the buyers have said? Eh, eh. They've already moved on. And that's part of the conversation I'm not hearing very much in this whole exclusive listing battle is that buyers don't like to come back a second time. And we've all tried it for years. A price adjustment, you call them, hey, we've adjusted the price, please come back. We've done this, we've done that, please come back. Buyers don't like to go back. It's got to be a part of the conversation. I'm just saying, again, I think the best information comes from the boots on the ground realtors. And I totally agree, Deborah. Let's put Deborah on the screen because I just love this woman, and she's currently helping somebody that we love up in her market. The conversations need to be happening. So I am grateful for all the headlines, and I'm grateful that the Wall Street Journal is looking at this, and that we have people like Bruce that are writing beautiful op-eds. And actually, what was funny was, y'all know I'm a big fan of James Dwickens from Next Home. I think he might be the smartest person in real estate, and he had reposted Bruce's op-ed and had somebody arguing with him in the comments who obviously didn't read it and just wanted to have an argument. That's not a discussion. A discussion says, all right, there's pros, there's cons, there's challenges. How are we going to deal with that? And I do think, again, the big money is not wanting to have a really thoughtful conversation. It is the boots on the ground agents who do, because we actually care about the best outcome for our buyers and sellers. And if you're thinking about selling, this is why we try to give you advice about the floors and the paint and the popcorn. It's not because we're trying to make you spend money to look like HGTV. It's because if you want the house to sell, we don't want you to go through trying it and then trying to back up because it gets so hard. We will do our level best, and then we still miss because consumers can be fickle, because the markets do move. And frankly, that's why big money has never really figured out real estate. You know this, right? It's because at the heart of every transaction are all these humans. Humans are so messy. And when you get messy humans that start fussing amongst themselves, they need their equally messy realtors to help absorb some of the emotion and keep the conversation going so that we can all figure this out. So, anyway, There's some thoughts on exclusive listings, private listings, pocket listings, whatever you want to call them. But if you are a consumer, you absolutely should ask your agent, what do they have access to? How are they going to help you? And then be interviewing. And if they tell you that you have to use them to get access to certain houses, then I think you should have a deeper conversation about what that means to you in the long run and what it means about that company in the long run. Now, if they tell you you can choose to use them, I think you might have a lovely person. But anytime I hear have to, my alarm bells go off. That being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day and I'll see you next time.